Hello and welcome to the Bald and Bloviating podcast. I'm your bald host, Mookie Spitz. And now I'm going to talk about luxurious bloviation by way of tweeting out my entire new novel. I think this idea is, frankly, the funnest and most engaging thing I've thought about vis-a-vis self-promoting and marketing the text. The idea originated months ago. The book itself is comprised of over 4,800 lines of text. And by that I mean it's a combination of fairly random dialogue interspersed with OCD style 3-line paragraphs. The font is Times Roman, so it's a serif font, which means an I is narrower than a W, which also means that the average number of characters and words in each of these 3-line paragraphs varies somewhat. There's a range. Somewhere between 175 and 195 characters in each 3-line paragraph. About 28 to 32, 34 words in each, I'm guessing. Now, why do that? As I've mentioned in another Bloviating podcast, I describe how this evolved. And suffice to say here, I've been writing blogs for years. Back in 2018, 2019, I really started to get back into creative writing. And I wrote short stories, roman à clé style novellas, opinion pieces, political essays, what have you, on the Medium platform. Now, Medium has a content management system that uses a Times Romanesque style font. And as I was writing, almost on a whim, I started to irrationally, religiously write in 3, 4, 5-line paragraphs. It started as a whim, but then it became obsessive. And while I'm doing this, I am solving numerous problems that I have had since I've been writing, going all the way back to my early 20s. And that is the ad hoc nature of prose. How long should any paragraph be? Well, it could be a word, an onomatopoeic bang, oops, ouch. Could be a single sentence that sits there calling attention to itself by its brevity. And then she opened the door. Hard line break, new paragraph. Find out what's behind that door. A paragraph could be 2 or 3 sentences. A paragraph could go 4 pages, depending on the whim of the writer. And prose should, one would argue, embody that sense of randomness engendered by the feeling, the flow of the ideation and emotion. Why put limits on it? The whole point is for prose to flow with the mood and sensibility of the writer to emotionally engage the reader, who likes, one would assume, that kind of variability, the oscillation between short and long paragraphs, ideas, images, descriptions peppered into the text in a way that's refreshing, always changing, evolving, and shape shifting with the flow of the narrative, the intensity and direction of the emotions. But it bothered me. It bothered me for the same reason, by analogy, that a painter would be annoyed by the size of their canvas changing with every brushstroke. The lack of a fixed boundary, the lack of form, the lack of a framework. My other problem with this free-flowing approach to prose is my tendency to keep going on and on and on. As you might have noticed, I can do that orally too, verbally. All of these podcasts are ad hoc. I'm not reading from any notes now. I'm literally holding up my phone to my face to get the best quality sound on this app that I'm using. And I could keep bloviating like this almost indefinitely. And I actually have to discipline myself now to get within an hour or so, which is pretty acceptable. And it's also the upper boundary for time for posting podcasts on Substack for some reason. They seem to have either throttled me or other users who don't get more than 10,000 views or listens. I get this little pop-up message that says, building a following engenders trust. What the fuck does that mean, Substack? Anyway, apparently I haven't engendered trust either in my audience or in the platform. So I max out in an hour. And that's probably a good thing for all the reasons I'm citing here. A limit. You want a limit. You want a boundary, however arbitrary. It's an hour on these podcasts now. And while I'm writing, it's 3, 4, 5 lines in each paragraph. That precludes me from bloviating on and on and on. It's a bigger issue if you step back and think about it from a writer's point of view, because the essence of good writing is prioritization, is selection. When you imagine a scene, when you imagine a story, a character, a thought, having limits is good. Not having limits almost encourages the writer to not so much lose focus, but to indulge in every possibility that comes to mind, which could distract the reader, could distract the writer. Because again, if you keep it wide open, when do you draw the line? When do you make that transition? When do you know that enough is enough? When do you know that not saying is more important than saying, when the hidden is more dramatically impactful than the revealed? So for all these reasons, I created these self-imposed, ad hoc, arbitrary rules to my writing while I was blogging, going all the way back to 2018 or so. And I loved it. It gamified my writing. And we're not just talking about loose 3, 4, or 5 line paragraphs. 3, 4, 5 line paragraphs that fill them as blocks. God damn it. My short story, or more accurately, my novella, Greg's Gift, which runs into about an hour and a half of a read, believe it or not, for a blog, which I love this novella. And I am going to do a part 2 of it as soon as I can. But suffice to say that Greg's Gift was written in this style, to the point where I not only religiously and zealously clung to its, I believe, 5 line paragraphs, but within each section of the novella, there were, I believe, 10 or maybe 12 paragraphs. And there were maybe 10 or 12 sections in the story, a fractal kind of pattern, a Chinese box within a box within a box. And as I allude to in another podcast, this forced me into thinking of things in the story that I otherwise never would have. So if I ran out of space and I had to go to another section, well, that changed the flow of the narrative now, didn't it? And if I ended before the requisite 10 or 12 paragraphs, then it just kind of was hanging there. And then I had to flow into a new idea, but then that changed the situation itself. And then all of a sudden, I'm thinking of new things that I never thought of before. The arbitrary boundaries and ad hoc rules constrained me and forced me to make decisions that I otherwise would never have to make. Lovely, wonderful. It also, as I mentioned, gamified the experience. It was an exercise in filling it up. And if it overflowed, I had to go to another paragraph and fill that up. And you would think that I was adding fluff and garbage, filler material, but it was actually the opposite. The structure forced me to write as succinctly as I could because remember, I tend to overdo it. I have the opposite of writer's block. I have so much to say. Once the world is created and characters are moving through it, they write themselves and they're taking on dimensionality that I didn't even anticipate. And I have trouble sometimes keeping up. I type quick, like 80, 90 words a minute, blind. But sometimes that's not fast enough. The ideas are pouring out. And if I'm limited to this structure and I'm curtailed by these boundaries, then I have to write the paragraph and rewrite it and write it and write it again. I need to make the transition smooth. They act like Lego pieces, so then I can move sections. And as I move sections, I need to edit them again to make sure that the transitions are sound and it makes sense. So much fun. So when the time came to do my dream science fiction book, the one that's been percolating for several years, based on the short story I first conceived in the kitchen in Stuytown, New York City, in the Lower East Side. I'm standing in my kitchen. Pandemic, January 2021, I believe. It popped into my head. I knew I had something. And of course, I wrote it in this style, this manic obsession, this irrational yet glorious obsession with block paragraphs. And Jonnie Fazoolie and the Transfinite Reality Engine came into being as a short story in this format, and I loved it. And it worked. And it fit particularly well for the story itself. Imagine prose leaping off the page and punching you in the face and then tickling you, beckoning you to keep going one after the other. And it had a cadence: 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. You don't turn the page and digitally keep scrolling. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, top, bottom, top, bottom. Before you know it, you've inhaled the story. And hopefully, if the story's any good, it explodes in your head after the fact. Wow, it was fun. So I told myself that if and when, more like when, Jonnie Fazoolie would reach maturity in the form of a fully blown novel, that it would equally religiously and equally zealously take on this format in a novel, the whole damn novel. And I did it. And I published just shy of my birthday on June 6th. And I believe the live link was available for purchase on June 7th, 2025. The goalposts moved and moved and moved. Originally, I wanted Valentine's Day because it's the first book in the Lover's Guide to the Infiniverse. But that was a fail. I had it. I just knew I could do more with it. And I just kept at it and I kept at it. And in the home stretch, as I've bloviated already in another podcast, 18, 19-hour days where I didn't leave my apartment, let alone leave my chair. All I did was sweat, eat, excrete, and sleep a few hours scattered here and there. I was obsessed because the whole thing was there. It was beautiful. And this manic obsession was further fueled by the gamification of writing the prose itself in these modular and scalable Lego bricks of these paragraphs. If I wanted to add a thought or a part of a narrative, just slip them right in there. When your paragraphs are random, it's much more difficult to edit. And the glory, coders know this. I had an Apple IIe computer back in 1980, 85, 86. And I remember programming interactive fiction games on it in the language Pascal, or Pascal, however you pronounce it, named after the philosopher, of course. And it was based on subroutines, similar to Lisp, but easier. And I remember coding these programs, and I love the beauty and symmetry of these routines nested within routines within subroutines, where one block of code would call another block of code, and they would be nested together and self-referential to each other. And that stuck in my mind too. And the monitors back then were this glowing green cathode ray tube. And now we've obviously made a lot of progress. The resolution on our monitors are so much better, but it's still monochrome. It's a white background with the black letters, right? And you can go with the Moon Age Daydream kind of inversion if you want the midnight view, but I don't do that. That'll, I think, burn my already bad eyes out. So you got the white background with the black letters, kind of like print, mimicking print. The resolution is pretty good. I blow the font up, but I've got about an inch margin on each side. I've got an 11-point Times Roman font, and I've got 3 lines in each paragraph, God damn it. And I went for it, and I did it, and I loved it. This is a new thing. People have gotten back to me after reading this book, or at least reading part of it. They don't seem to complain about it. They take it for granted. They roll with it. There's no innate resistance to reading in this style, probably because we're all used to reading in this style from the internet. Axios.com, the New York Times. Quick, controlled bursts of prose. You are scrolling on your little device. Most content consumption is on smartphones and this little screens. And you're tapping and scrolling top to bottom. You can't have 5-page long paragraphs, David Foster Wallace, infinite jest ruminations. Boom, boom, boom. We want our information. We want it fast. We want it efficient. And we want it in little chunks as we get in our car, as we sit on the toilet, as we eat our breakfast, as we move through life. These phones, an extension of ourselves, checking them 2, 3, 4, 500 times a day. The interface is bullshit, and I address that even in my novel. We need integration of multi-channel, multimedia, multimodal. We're going to end up like the Borg with the shit wired right into our heads. That's inevitable. The internet of everything, not just things. Every surface is going to be responsive to us. Touch panels on walls and on tables. You walk into a restaurant, and the menu is going to be dynamic to you. It's going to prioritize the food in the restaurant according to what you ate last in terms of deviating from that, what you're allergic to deviating from that, and highlighting foods that your profile knows that you love and knows that you haven't eaten in a while and knows that you're not allergic to. Touch that table in your restaurant, it's going to light up and the menu is going to be integrated into the surface of your eating experience. How could it not? But I digress. Anyway, content is in nugget form. It's dynamic, it's brief, it's intense, and it's idea, 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 idea. And if writing is not breathtaking, and if it doesn't explode in your head, then why bother? And that is my point of view. That was what I was trying to accomplish with this book. And what fascinates me is the relationship between form and content, much like the German concrete poetry people were obsessed by, the poets in post-World War II Germany. Remember the apple with the worm, and it had the word Äpfel, 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 which made up the shape of an apple. And then in the apple was the worm, and it had the words Wurm, 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 Wurm. That's the most iconic example of concrete poetry where the words take on the appearance of an object. And they have very little to minimal semantic meaning, and the syntax becomes everything. Form and function and meaning are all unified. That is fucking cool. And you could go back to the Kabbalist mystics and their numerology of the Old Testament and the Sefer Yetzirah and all of these books that they never showed us in Hebrew school. The mystics, this idea that text is an object, text is a number, is cool. So that adds dimensionality to your read. And if you've got a writer sensitive to this and empowering you to get short, controlled bursts of ideas that are nonetheless interconnected with each other to create a holistic story, that is badass. That is cool. And that differentiates prose like this from the mountain of mediocrity that's out there in all genres. There's nothing unique about the storytelling or the way the story is told. And every artist who has ever done anything innovative has done both. They transform not only the content, but the form in which it's expressed. Eddie Van Halen, the guitar player, not only revolutionized the electric guitar in terms of his incendiary, ballistic attack on the fretboard, but he redesigned the electric guitar. He combined the humbucker pickups of the Gibsons for that rich, resonant sound, especially with harmonics and dive bombing and tapping and sustain, with the raw wood feel of the Fenders, which were usually single coil, a more sharp but tinnier sound. He revolutionized the instrument, how it was played, and the style in which it was played. Form and function are united, and this analog is expressed in all the arts. Think about any medium, and anyone who's ever made a difference has transformed the how and the why, and ultimately the execution itself, and the way they express themselves is integrated into the expression itself to become part and parcel of their style. And it's distinctive and it's unique and it's impactful and powerful. It's instantly identifiable. A great musician, you recognize that they are playing or it's their songwriting or composition within two measures. You know it's Debussy or Beethoven, Rachmaninoff, or Eddie Van Halen. You can hear it, and each of these people revolutionized not only the songwriting, but the playing and the composition. So when I thought about finally doing my dream novel, all of these factors had to come into play, not only to make it meaningful for you, the reader, but meaningful for me, the writer. And I can't express the level of joy and satisfaction that I have experienced writing this damn book. And I can't even begin to tell you how difficult it was. But it was a glorious labor of love. I've never been so immersed to the point where I creeped out of that immersion and I was stunned. Not only is there a world outside my smelly bedroom here with my desk and my old PC that gasps for air with not even enough memory left to update the operating system, with a keyboard that looks like a piece of garbage covered in dreck with at least 3 million keystrokes on it. Oh my God, it was fun. You got to wallow in your own filth because that's where the fertility is. It's taking no names, it's making no compromises. It's a monk-like state of total immersion. And it's awesome. If you've ever been lucky enough to be this debilitated by your own obsessive fixation on anything, then you know what I'm talking about. I did it this way with writing this book, finishing this book, because I've been working on it for pretty much a year, with the origin of it going back several years, all the way back to 2021. Hopefully, you could say to yourself that you have had this experience, this religious experience of total manic in introspection and immersion. Whether you were cleaning your garage, or you were working on a work project, or you were planning your daughter's wedding, or you were traveling in some exotic location and you were on a 20-mile hike in the Himalayas. You know what I'm talking about. And I'm not talking about it from the vantage point of the artiste. I'm talking about it from the vantage point of this human love of obsessive, total, meditative immersion. Woohoo! So here I go full circle to this awesome idea I had for tweeting the whole damn novel, which is the funnest self-promotion idea, earned media idea I have had. And the origin of this idea goes, as I mentioned a few months ago, I gave you this extensive context for why tweets make sense, which is I got these 3-line paragraphs interspersed with dialogue, none of which is longer than 200 characters, more than enough to fit on a tweet on X, formerly Twitter. So what I did today, and I'm gloating about my luxurious bloviation of being able to blast out to the world one of my 3-line paragraphs or line of dialogue, get this, systematically every hour throughout every day for the next 200 days 4,800 or so lines of Jonnie Fazoolie and the Transfinite Reality Engine, tweeted from at Jonnie Fazoolie, JONNIE on X, going backwards. It's reverse order. I start with the very last line, and my final tweet 200 days from now will be the very first. Now, why did I do it that way? Well, if you go to profiles on Twitter, they obviously share the most latest tweet. It is, in accounting terms, what is it? It is it's actually last in, first up, right? So all your tweets are on top and they cascade down waterfall style in your profile. So if someone comes to the profile and wants to make heads or tails really immediately of the book and the continuity of the narrative, albeit from the end of the book to the beginning, then it behooved me to do this in reverse. And that's what I've done. And now it's after midnight on June 28th, Saturday. I did this yesterday on the 27th. I had to spend several hours doing it because it took a little bit of technical jockeying to make this happen. You come to the Jonnie Fazoolie profile on X, and you see the narrative unfold. It cuts into it as it's already happening toward the tail end of the book, but you can already see continuity and you see it happening. So, spoiler alert, if you don't want to know what happens at the end of the book and you want to read the book, then don't pay too much attention. But the value here is that a tweet goes out from this profile every hour on the hour. And regardless of how people search and what they do, they could find it, they could see it. I'm now connecting with other Twitter profiles through Jonnie Fazoolie. And I just think it, in and of itself, is such a quirky and fun idea. And now you say, well, I'm giving away the book for free. Well, what the hell am I giving away? It's all about the form that your content takes. Like they used to say on Maxwell Street in Chicago, it's the package. It's the package. You sell hot dogs from the cart. You sell silk shirts from the men's store. It's the package. You got to get the package right. Buy the book, download the Kindle, go to the Jonnie Fazoolie profile on X. You get the content, but it's the package. You're paying for the package. I just think this is so fun. And making it technically happen, I had to take the G-Doc, the dynamic G-Doc, where the book exists, where I wrote it, and download it as a Microsoft Word file. I then had to cut and paste the entire content of that into a Notepad text editor so that it was a text-only document. I then had to transfer that in turn to an Excel document, a Microsoft Excel document. No, this is not a paid promotion, nor do they need a paid promotion, especially from me. But anyway, hello, Satya Nadella. I think you're the best CEO ever. Anyway, Microsoft Excel, Jonnie Fazoolie, 4,800 lines of stuff. And then I had to figure out how to number each of these lines because I had to flip their order. So I figured out the row function in Excel to number every line in column B. The text was in column A, the numbers in column B, 1 through 4,800 plus. And then I had to figure out how to reverse it with the data filter. And then I did that from high to low in column B. And then I had the novel backwards, line by line by line. And then I found a platform, Publer, Publer I found. They're $48 a year, I think, and I paid. And they do batch blasting of social media platforms. So I created the Jonnie Twitter account. I created a Jonnie Fazoolie email too. And then I batch loaded, I uploaded. Oh, I had to also translate that Excel file with the flipped order into what's called a CSV file, which then batch loaded into Publer. And then in Publer, I had to assign hourly posts across a dynamic calendar, Monday through Sunday. One post each hour, 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week, for what the equivalent is about 200 days of tweets. And then this software package auto-loaded each of those calendar dates or posts with the line from the CSV file. And long story, even longer, it's working. Publer is blasting Twitter through its back-end API with Jonnie Fazoolie and the Transfinite reality engine, one line at a time in reverse hourly. And this, some reason, makes me so happy. It is so awesome, this idea. So once again, if you're listening and you have access to X, and why X did I pick this? Well, X, you can say, is a cesspool and is a mess, but it's an open platform. It's public. Everything you post is out there for the world, and anyone can search it and access it. And like Borges' library or my spider's jar, there's so much in there nobody even knows what's going on, and you could just get lost. But as I'm saying, it's a wonderful self-promotion idea. And I just love the idea itself that I'm blasting. I'm luxuriously bloviating. Every hour, Jonnie is tweeting and tweaking at the world through his profile. And it makes me feel so happy. This is so much fun. So check it out. If you've got X, follow Jonnie Fazoolie. And you don't have to read it if you don't want to spoil the novel. And if you don't give a shit, then you could just enjoy yourself and like, comment, and share on that and on this podcast where I've devoted to my own luxurious bloviation. And if nothing else, may this rant and this exercise and this approach to living in life infuse you with enthusiasm in whatever you do. So don't hesitate to dive in and give yourself to what you love. And it doesn't have to make any money, and it doesn't have to please anybody but yourself. If you've got the man cave, creep into it. If you love cooking, go for it. Make the fanciest meal, the most exotic concoction you feel like. If you feel like exploring the world, if you feel like trying wines, if you're into flipping real estate, if you're into binge watching Netflix, our time on this planet is finite. The clock is ticking, and it's so easy to fall into negative thinking, demotivating ennui, and this pickiness that's become such a part of our life where we can't find the right partner, or we have a partner and we wish we didn't, or we're always settling and everything is a compromise and nothing is ever quite right. And we live in this stasis of, it's okay. Everything is okay. Try to pump it up. Make it more than okay. Make make a yes turn into a hell yes by finding what makes you happiest. And don't do it halfway, do it all the way. And as you can probably tell from this rant, a lot of people think I'm just knucking futs with this bullshit. I'm out of my goddamn mind where I spent all this time and effort self-publishing a novel with no assurance that I'm going to sell any more than the people I know and who might do me a favor by fucking buying it, and then spend half a day figuring out how I can tweet the goddamn thing. But that's the whole point. And here's the thing, and my parting thought on this bloviation: the more overtly meaningless the thing that you do, the more intrinsically rewarding it is. And why is that? Because you're not dependent on anyone else's opinion, because you're not doing it for reasons that are outside the doing itself. And not only is intrinsic satisfaction the most satisfying thing that you can do, but it makes you inured to the feedback or criticism, not only of others, but yourself. You're able to live it up within the world or the project or whatever it is you're doing with impunity and with feverish gusto. And I lay it on out from this vantage point of this eccentric writer type who's got no idea what the fuck he's doing in the broader picture of reality. But I gotta tell you, it's taken me a while to figure it out. It's taken me a while to figure out how to write a novel that I actually adore. I think that this thing is fun. It's representative of my vision, and the delta between what I thought it could be and what it actually is exceeds my own expectations of it. And that is super rewarding. And if nobody listens to this podcast, it felt so good to luxuriously bloviate it. And if no one buys or downloads or fucking retweets my book, it don't matter, because this is all so much fun. And yes, the rent must be paid. And yes, there's a debt to nature due, but paying it is so much easier knowing that I've got all of this bullshit as the backbone of my happiness. And whether it's early in life, in midlife, or late in life, grab it, take it. Nobody gives a shit. You feel like everyone's judging all of us, but everyone is so sucked up into their own world and so distracted that they really, really don't care. And in that vacuum, that existential vacuum of nobody giving a shit, we can find our greatest happiness by locking into and identifying a sense of purpose that we can indulge and enjoy and throw back out into the world. Take it or leave it. Thanks for listening. I hope this makes you feel as good as it made me feel talking about it. And more, much more to come as long as I keep kicking. because it's taken me a really, really long time. I used to not like my shit. I didn't like what I wrote. I didn't really enjoy what I was even bloviating about. But can you tell? Can you tell? I am really, really entertaining myself. And if I can entertain myself, there's gotta be somebody who'll be entertained by me entertaining myself. Thanks for listening. Like, comment, share.